The Columbus City Council meeting for July 19th, 2021 will now come to order. In compliance with the Open Meeting Act, Nebraska Revised Statute 84-1407, a current copy of this act is posted in the meeting room. Madam Clerk, would you please call roll?
Bulkley.
Here.
Augustine Schulte. Here. Barr.
Here.
Hemer.
Here.
Jablonski.
Here.
Kreshaw.
Here.
Lohr.
Here.
Roth.
Here.
Schilling.
Here.
Mayor Bulkley, the roll has been called.
Thank you. Mrs. Council President.
Our Father, thank you for the opportunity to serve our fellow citizens. Please give us your wisdom and guidance to make the proper decisions entrusted to this governmental body. May our conduct show respect, honor, and courtesy to each other, as well as to all our citizens. Amen.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hail at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bomb bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. And welcome everyone to tonight's council meeting. If at any time during our meeting this evening, anyone in our audience would like to come forward and address the council, we'd ask that you do that. We'd ask that you identify yourself with name and address, and that you would keep comments to 5 minutes or less. With that, we'll move on to the consent agenda.
Item 4, consent agenda. The following items are considered to be routine by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a City Council member or citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from consent status and considered in its normal sequence on the agenda. Item 4A, minutes of the July 6, 2021 City Council meeting. Item 4B, minutes of the July 13th, 2021 Civil Service Commission meeting certifying police officer candidates Nor Figueroa Furlan, Zachary McLeod, and Eduardo Sandoval. Item 4C, reappointment of Chuck Whitney as delegate to the Nebraska Cooperative Government Commission for a one-year term. Item 4D, reappointment of Ray Hayek and Larry Mares to the Board of Appeals for 3-year terms. Item 4E, reappointment of Alicia Misek and Linda Clater to the Employee Retirement Committee for 2-year terms. Item 4F, resolution number R21-96, authorizing payment of various improvement projects. Item 4G, Finance Department reports. And item 4H, payroll and bills on file. Mr. Mayor and Council, is there anything you would like removed from consent status?
Mr. Mayor, I move that the items on the consent agenda be approved as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion passes. Brings us up to reports on council committees.
Item 10A, Public Property Safety and Works Committee, July 12th, 2021. Item 10A1, amend city code to lift the prohibition on alcohol in city property and implement a permitting process. The Public Property Safety and Works Committee recommends that the city code be amended to lift the prohibition on alcohol on city property and a permitting process be implemented.
Mr. Mayor, I move that this report be adopted.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt this committee report. Any discussion? Yes, sir.
I guess as I heard the committee hearing, I do think we should really stay away from the BYOB and go with special designated license. I think it's more controllable. I think you'll have less problems. Once again, as a downtown business person, I'm really not real excited about that being incorporated, but I understand what we're trying to do is to attract people to come downtown and be a part of that. And then, but that's just my comments.
The only comment I have is that the permitting process would only be necessary for the BYOB, and that's what was discussed at committee. So that's what I'll put together, and then we can have those discussions when it comes back.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by aye. Those opposed, nay. There must be a Y in this day of the week, and it doesn't want to come up on the motion passes.
Item 10A2, ordinance to allow the creation of entertainment districts with common consumption areas. The Public Property, Safety, and Works Committee recommends that an ordinance be drafted to allow entertainment districts.
Mr. Mayor, I move that this report be adopted.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt this committee report. Any discussion?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
As I testified in the committee hearing, as a downtown business owner, again, the problems that we're experiencing and probably unintended consequences from opening this up to an area where people can walk around freely. We're exhibiting people sticking beer cans and stuff into my flower pots. There are cigarette butts all over my front of my building. People are urinating in the alley. You know, I just really think we need to have written into this thing that some security other than our city forces to enforce any of this this district, if that's what they really want.
Any other discussion? Yes, sir.
Taylor Anderson, 3653 36th Avenue. Just curious, and shame on me for not reading the minutes ahead of time, but what exactly does this mean, entertainment districts, and what are we trying to accomplish by that?
Sure. So an entertainment district is allowed by state law. A municipality, if they want to allow an entertainment district, which is basically a common consumption area, they have to have an ordinance that sets out the parameters to do so. And in an entertainment district, well, for example, there are existing ones. They can be permanent or they can be temporary. So a permanent example in Nebraska would be the Capitol District in Omaha or the Rail Yard in Lincoln. There's also temporary ones that happen in other communities for events such as like an Oktoberfest or a Rib Fest or something like that. And it just means that in an area designated by the liquor license, roads have to be closed. There can be no vehicular traffic. Pedestrian access has to be limited. There has to be a shared common area, and there has to be food sold. And while all those things are happening, that can be a common consumption area. So patrons can have adult beverages out where they normally couldn't. So if the street's closed, they can cross the street to the park, for example, if it were downtown, or to another business, as long as that area is closed to traffic, is secure. There's a number of regulations that go along with it. So if anybody ever wanted to do it, there's a number of rules and regulations that would go along with it.
Goal of this being, what do we get out of this? What's the goal?
Well, it's requested to attract more people downtown, to have more, entertainment and make downtown more of a destination.
Thank you.
What we're trying to do is come up with reasons for people to come downtown and spend more time downtown. We have lawn chairs on the square. We have, some venues like that periodically. The hope and the thought is that this would stimulate more than that and let it grow into, a destination place where we could do these kind of things on a more regular basis. And I think it's one of those things that we'll have to walk into and evaluate as we do it. And there may be some things we have to tweak as we get into it and realize, but it's not unique. It's being done in other communities. So there's been a push from many of the downtown businesses to try. We keep hearing, what can we do? What can we do? Well, here's something we'd like to do. We'd like to try it. And, shame on us for not trying it, and then let's see what we can do to make it work.
And so that kind of then ties back to the previous, ordinance there, the 10A.1 about city property. I assume Frankfurt Square is probably the city property that's primarily in mind there, correct?
That, and if you had a company picnic or a family reunion, and you were, taking up 7 or 8 tables in Pawnee Park and wanted to have a cookout, you'd be able to have your cooler with you and enjoy some beverages if that's what you wanted to do.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion passes.
Item 10A3, January through March 2021 Quarterly Report of the Traffic Control Device Committee. The Public Property Safety and Works Committee recommends that the quarterly report of the Traffic Control Device Committee be approved.
Mr. Mayor, I move that this report be adopted.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt this committee report. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion passes.
Item 10B, Public Finance, Judiciary, and Personnel Committee, July 13th, 2021. Item 10B1, change the current basic life and AD&D coverage from Kansas City Life to Principal effective August 1st, 2021. The Public Finance, Judiciary, and Personnel Committee recommends that basic life and AD&D coverage be changed from Kansas City Life to Principal effective August 1st, 2021.
Mr. Mayor, I move that this committee report be adopted.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt this committee report. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion passes. Brings us up to new business.
Item 13A, appointment of Doug Moore to the Employee Retirement Committee for a 2-year term.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the appointment of Doug Moore be approved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve this appointment. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion passes.
Item 13B, appointment of Jessica Caban to the Civil Service Commission to fill the unexpired term of Jack Gutierrez and waive the 2-week waiting period.
Council members, with your permission, the mayor would like to submit Jessica Caban for filling the unexpired term of Jack Gutierrez until April 2024. Jessica Caban is a resident of Columbus and a bilingual professional with experience in workforce development, business, public relations, administration, hospitality, logistics, and customer service. She is currently employed as the Events and Administrative Coordinator at the Columbus Area Chamber of Commerce. This position has led her to serve as support staff to the Engaging Diversity Committee, which is responsible for the implementation of an annual diversity and inclusion summit, an educational opportunity for business and human resources professionals on topics of diversity at the workplace. Jessica has completed 69 credits towards a bachelor's degree in psychology. She has a passion for serving her community and has been part of different collaborations among nonprofits and service providers in Platte and Colfax counties who work together for the betterment of their committees. Council members, we need a motion to approve this appointment, please.
I move that we ratify the appointment of Jessica Caban to the Civil Service Commission.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion passes.
Item 13C, the quote from Gearing Construction and Ready Mix Company Incorporated in the amount of $60,000, $431.25 for concrete replacement program.
Mr. Mayor, I move the quote from Garin Construction and Ready Mix Company Incorporated for concrete replacement program be accepted.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to accept this quote. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion passes.
Item 13D, plan specifications, estimate of cost in the amount of $125,000 for authorization to advertise for bids for 33rd Avenue Viaduct uplighting on the bridge. The plans and specifications are on file in the engineering department.
Mr. Mayor, recommend the plan specifications and estimate of cost for 33rd Avenue Viaduct lighting project be approved and staff be authorized to advertise for bids.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to accept the plan specification and estimate of cost for this project. Any discussion?
This is, we're just fixing what's already there. We're not adding to, correct?
It will be new lighting.
Lighting that was already there, but it's not functioning.
Well, the current lighting, right, is not LED, but and it hasn't been functioning very well.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion passes.
Item 13E, application of CMR Holdings LLC for preliminary plat of Eagle View Second Subdivision north of 53rd Street, approximately 1.2 miles east of 33rd Avenue. The Planning Commission recommends approval.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the preliminary plat of Eagle View Second Subdivision be approved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve this plat. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion passes.
Item 13F, application of GRQ LLC for preliminary plat of GRQ Incorporated Second Subdivision, northeast corner of East 29th Avenue and 18th Street. The Planning Commission recommends the public hearing be continued to August 9th, 2021 at 7 p.m.
I would ask, could we take both of these and combine them and make a motion to move them to the next meeting, or do we need to do both as one, council?
You could do both. You'd have to read the second one as well, if that's what the council would like to do.
Item 13G, public hearing application of GRQ LLC for final plat and development agreement of GRQ Incorporated Second Subdivision, northeast corner of East 29th Avenue and 13th or 18th Street. The Planning Commission recommends the public hearing be continued to August 9th, 2021 at 7 p.m.
You need a motion for this, correct?
Right.
The motion should be to remove or just to move?
To
This
carry,
one's a public hearing, so we'll continue
Just
both.
move, yeah.
Then I move that item 13F and 13G be moved to the next, removed from this agenda and
Continued.
continued on the August 9th meeting.
Second.
we have a motion and a second to continue this item 13F and 13G on the August 9th meeting, planning and zoning meeting.
Yeah, and then
August 9th,
16th, city council.
August 16th City Council meeting.
at the August 16th city council meeting. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by aye, those opposed nay. Motion passes.
Item 13H, comments from the mayor and city council members. In compliance with the Open Meeting Act, no discussion may be held on this item.
Council members, comments this evening? All right, let's just move right on then. We'll be on to resolutions.
Item 14A, resolution number R21-97, approving the agreement with Granville Custom Homes Incorporated for construction of the Frontier Regional Stormwater Treatment Facility south of the intersection of Armory Drive and Cozy Drive.
Mr. Mayor, I move for the adoption of resolution number R21-97.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve resolution R21-97. Any discussion?
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
it's my understanding that they will put this in and we will reimburse them in credits down the line when that property is assessed, is that correct?
Right. They'll pay their share of it, but then also other properties will be assessed their share of it because it will serve more than just their property.
And it's dollar for dollar, even exchange.
Yep. We just couldn't get it done this year, and they want it done quicker, so they agreed to do this so it could
Sounds
get
like a
done
good
quicker.
solution. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by aye, those opposed nay. Motion passes.
Item 15A, ordinance number 21-25, authorizing issuance of highway allocation fund pledge bonds, Series 2021, in an amount not to exceed $6,600,000 for the purpose of paying for the improvements of the Highway 30 corridor.
Mr. Mayor, I recommend the rules be suspended and ordinance number 21-25 be read by number only.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and read ordinance number 21-25 by number only. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by aye, those opposed nay. Motion passes.
Item 17A, ordinance number 21-22, approving the rezoning application of Providing Property Solutions LLC to rezone property located at 3770 18th Avenue from R1.
We have to,
Oh, I'm so sorry.
we
I skipped ahead too quickly.
Shame on you.
Ordinance number 21-25 be adopted.
Mr. Mayor, I move for the adoption of ordinance number 21-25.
Sorry.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance number 21-25. Any discussion?
We're using TIF pool money to pay these back, is that correct?
That's correct. The TIF pool money, as it is collected over the next 15 years, will pay off these bonds. We had to use our highway allocation, our funds to issue these bonds. Those, as TIF is not a something we can issue debt on, but we have adequate highway allocation to do so.
But eventually, we will pay it back through the TIF
Exactly.
pool.
All right,
And Mr. Ziegler will get us a great rate and everything?
sure he will.
Yeah.
Don't need to.
No.
Didn't know we were going to school tonight.
Don't have it memorized?
Probably do. Good evening, Cody Wickham with D.A. Davidson. I've got some information circulating around to provide a little more color on the type of financing that we're looking to do here. So yes, the goal is to have the TIF proceeds make the repayment on the debt service on these bonds. So Heather provided the cover sheet that you have on your packets there that gives a breakdown of the estimated TIF revenues over the next 15 years. And as Tara mentioned, you can't just issue TIF bonds for this type of project. So you had a couple different avenues that you could do. One would be the creation of street improvement districts, and for a city of the first class, it's just a lot more complicated to go that route, and it does in often cases require the assessments of those properties. This is a pretty straightforward transaction where going the highway allocation pledge fund bond route is definitely the path of least resistance. Your highway allocation receipts are substantial. They're in excess of $2.5 million, so they're a very good backstop for this type of bond. And on top of that, if those highway allocation receipts were to be insufficient, you would have a limited tax general obligation on top of that. So this is a very strong credit that you're using to issue this debt. So we expect to get very good interest rate execution. On the second page of your packets there, so where I have highlighted the TIF revenue on page 1, the yellow highlight on page 2 matches up with those numbers. So basically we kind of backed into this financing as far as structuring your overall debt package. So you have revenue constraints that are exactly what the projected TIF revenues would be, and then we structure the principal and interest, those total amounts to coincide with that expected revenue. So again, you're using highway allocation receipts as your security with a limited tax backstop. But the plan over time is as these TIF revenues come in, those will cover the annual payments on the bond. So it's a little bit different than a normal level debt service schedule because there is some of this principal that's being deferred or backloaded because your revenues on the TIF are going to grow over time. So if you flip to the next page, I made a couple of highlights. Your expected true interest cost over this 15-year financing is a 2.263%. I actually expect that we'll do better when we hit the marketplace. We've seen a nice dip in rates since July 1st, 17 basis points on the 5-year and almost 26 basis points on the 10-year. These are going to kind of fall in between, the 10 to 15 range. And if you flip one more page, this is a graph that you're maybe used to seeing in previous times that I've been up here, but you can see that the top graph is a 20-year the 20-year graph for AAA bond rates, and the middle graph is the 10-year history for 10-year AAA bond rates. And I made some highlights on the latest, but you can see in those legends, the low that we've hit on the 20-year was a 1.08, and that was on August 11th of 2020. And we're only 7 basis points higher than that right now on the 20-year at a 1.15, and these were updated last Monday. These weren't done quite yet before I had to hit the road today. But, and again, we're actually a little bit better. So on the 10-year, the low that we've really ever experienced, this goes back 10 years, but you could take it back probably 50. The low that we hit was 0.58% on AAA 10-year rates on, again, August 11th of 2020, and we're at 0.84 at the moment. So 26 basis points above record historic lows. So your timing is very good once again for the city to issue some debt.
Thanks, Cody.
Very good. Any questions?
Just want to apologize for calling you Ziegler, but it's Wickham, Mr. Wickham. Those are two prominent pious names, and I keep getting them confused. I'm sorry.
Mick's actually my godfather.
There you go. See?
Any questions? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. In favor signify by aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion passes. Brings us up to
Item 17A, ordinance number 21-22, approving the rezoning application of Providing Property Solutions LLC to rezone property located at 3770 18th Avenue from R1 Single Family Residential District to R3 Multiple Family Residential District and amend the future land use map of the comprehensive plan. The Planning Commission recommends approval with the condition that only townhomes, duplexes, or single-family residences be allowed.
Mr. Mayor, I request to abstain from voting on this item and the subsequent item concerning the rezoning of and special use permit at 3770 18th Avenue, as I have a potential conflict of interest as I own property within 300 feet of the subject property. But because I do have this interest, I request that I can remain in the room and address the council as a citizen and a concerned citizen.
Councilman, as in previous meetings, you're welcome to do that. You do not have to leave your seat to do that. If you do not wish to, you can go to the audience if you wish to.
Thank you.
It's up to you. With that said, we will have discussion on ordinance number 21-22. Anyone here to? I'm sorry.
Mr. Mayor, I move ordinance number 21-22 be adopted.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance. Now, any discussion? Let's start with those opposed to this discussion.
Just to clarify, we are discussing the rezoning,
Right.
correct? Okay.
Anyone to discuss the rezoning change, going from R1 to R3? Now, and can I ask and qualify, that zoning, if that would change, would be identical to the zoning that's just to the south of this piece of property?
That's correct.
With the current townhouses?
Correct.
So the wording, everything of that is the same?
Correct.
Okay. Yes, sir.
I'm Brent Roth, 3664 Regency Place. I live adjacent to the associated property, and I have great fear that this change in zoning and the special use permit will devalue my property, become a nuisance in the area.
Brent, we're talking right now of the rezoning, not the special use permit.
I understand that. I wanted to yes.
You're welcome to
Thank you.
continue. I just wanted
Thank
to
you.
clarify.
I realize that. But the rezoning, I'm afraid, will ultimately devalue my property, become a nuisance to my property, and will become a nuisance particularly to the people that live directly adjacent to the property. They're here in the audience, and I will let them speak for themselves, but I would request that the council deny the rezoning request. Thank you.
Any other discussion on the zoning request? The rezoning request.
Yep, this is Mike Hansen, 3670 Regency Place. I echo Mr. Roth's concerns, and I would be opposed to the rezoning as well.
Any other comments from the audience in opposed to this?
I have a statement to read.
Sure, please do.
Christy Hackett, and I'm 3775 Regency Place. In the course of this discussion regarding rezoning and lodging permit for the property in Regency Place, a fact that has escaped consideration is that the property in question was last utilized as a church. When we invested in the property where we currently reside, we were fully aware of the adjoining property was owned by North Park Baptist Church. We understand that Sunday mornings created some traffic in the area. There was no concern related to noise or lighting issues, certainly no concern of drug or alcohol abuse, parties, or concerns of potential property damage. The ordinance before you to rezone the property may seem benign on the surface, but it would dramatically alter the use of this land and would certainly raise likelihood of some, if not of all, the issues I just listed. The church building would be retrofitted to accommodate 20 to 30 overnight guests who would rotate guests as often as daily with little or no assurance of appropriate use of the building or property with no supervision or oversight. This rezoning provides no occupancy limits, and as no ordinances are currently in place within Columbus for short-term rentals, despite the fact that other Nebraska municipalities have taken such action. Further, additional structures could be erected under the definition of a single-family home or duplex under this ordinance, further increasing the amount of traffic and potential issues with noise, lighting, and general disrespect for adjoining properties. While the conditions attached to the zoning request would preclude hotels and motels in name, the reality is that between the current large structure and other structures that could be built on the property and utilized as short-term rentals, the occupancy would be greater than a motel and would function in almost an identical fashion. While I appreciate the entrepreneurial spirit of the purchaser to take advantage of the influx of visitors that will undoubtedly be coming to Columbus once a casino is built, and foresight to acquire a prime location that is just down the road from the bypass, which will empty near the casino site, I'm greatly disturbed by the veiled attempt to manipulate zoning regulations to establish a quasi-motel under the auspices of short-term rental property. As a homeowner located in a quiet residential neighborhood, I take issue with the notion that this property can be utilized for a radically different purpose than its current function. I'm quite certain that as homeowners in this town, you would all take the same position as all of us before you today if this rezoning attempt were put forward in your backyard. I urge you to do the right thing and acknowledge and affirm the intended use and current zoning of the property in question and vote against this obvious attempt to spot zone. Please respect the property owners who you represent that have invested in this neighborhood and seek to simply maintain the current comprehensive plan and use the land in question. Thank you.
Thank you. I would make one comment. I mean, you referenced spot zoning, and the fact that it would be the same as what is just to the south would kind of eliminate the fact that it could be spot zoning. One of the things we want to keep in mind is what is already there. So just a comment.
And local jurisdictions cannot create regulations that restrict Airbnbs. State law says that very specifically. Lincoln hasn't done that. Any community that you think has implemented regulations stopping short-term rentals such as Airbnb, they haven't. They cannot by state law. What they have done is required a permit so that they can charge those properties a hotel occupation tax like they collect in all other rental properties. There cannot be a restriction on Airbnbs in any residential zone.
I was just going to ask too that I don't see anything in this ordinance that says anything about short-term rentals. All I see is duplexes, townhouses, single-family homes.
That's because
That's
short-term
all
rentals,
that's all there is.
Airbnbs are allowed by right. We cannot prohibit them.
Okay, but I'm just.
But you could also put them in an R2, correct?
You could put them in any residential zone.
Yeah, it could be
R1,
R1, R2, anything.
Right.
Currently, I have a space that I rent downtown that we go through Airbnb, and we do limit people, but we do that on our own, just out of courtesy to the neighbors, and to the space that we've created. It's just a good business decision. I don't know. This is a tough one. We try to encourage people to have an entrepreneurial spirit, to try to take on things that are outside of the box. But, you really got to look at your neighbors and what kind of the unintended consequences that you're going to create. And I think with the size of the crowd that's here, I think you've already created that. It's unfortunate that you realized that this was going to be a heavily discussed item and chose not to be here last week to discuss any of these issues. I find that very disturbing that you really don't care about the neighbors. You just want this thing to pass through. With that being said, I will probably vote against this item because I just don't believe it was the intent to go forward with it is I don't think it was done in the right fashion.
Any other? Yes, please.
I'm Colette Hansen, 3670 Regency Place, and I have a prepared statement as well. My neighbors and I are here tonight because of the formal letter sent to each of us advising of the requested change in zoning from R1 to R3 on 3770 18th Avenue and the special use permit. I hope we were sent this letter not only as a matter of legally required correspondence, but also because our opinions and our interests are important to our city council, and they would want to act on behalf of the residents impacted by this request. The R3 is obviously not necessary for an Airbnb. We've already determined that. There is no need to change the zoning to accommodate an Airbnb. It seems odd to me that an applicant would purchase a property in an existing neighborhood while knowing the zoning restrictions and then attempt to force new zoning onto the neighborhood. The applicant has not provided clear plans or statements about the intended use, has not provided drawings or proposals, has not presented anything compelling for rezoning except for a polite promise to do something nice. The applicant, according to the documentation, has purchased and sold within a few months' time other properties to Scott Royal Smith of Austin, Texas. The applicant just last week went through Providing Property Solutions of Austin, Texas, and received an LLC from the Nebraska Secretary of State's office. And although the applicant in Nebraska is a Nebraska agent for the Texas-based Providing Property Solutions, Scott Royal Smith still owns that company. The applicant has also transferred property within Columbus and in Platt Center to Scott Smith on 2 other occasions. When the applicant's attorney called me this morning, he was intimidating, to say the least. I was quite upset. It's my opinion, which I am entitled to, as is every resident in this room, that this rezoning is about something far larger than the $65,000 property sitting at 3770 18th Avenue. I ask the council to please consider the rights of the neighbors and the fact that those rights should not be ignored due to the purchase of one applicant who wants to alter the current zoning of our neighborhood. Although the applicant claims to be concerned about our neighborhood and about Columbus in general, I find it doubtful that Mr. Scott Royal Smith of Austin, Texas, has any long-term interest in our community or in my neighborhood. I ask the council to deny the request for R3 zoning and maintain the current R1 zoning, which allows every resident to do an Airbnb.
Any other comments? Please.
Pete Bennett, 3661 Regency Place. I can't add much more than Mrs. Hanson just did, but I am definitely against it. And we have a nice, quiet neighborhood. We pay pretty good taxes in that neighborhood, and I hope that you folks represent the neighbors. Thank you.
My name is Terry Kane, and my wife and I live at 3768 Regency Place, and we've lived there 22 years, and we are against the effort, the rezoning effort. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dwayne Osdick. Hi, Mr. Mayor, Councilman, and Councilwomen. My wife Kim and I are against the rezoning, and would appreciate you also to vote against and deny the rezoning request.
Could we get your address, please?
3662 Regency Place.
Okay.
My name is Gary Stanger, 3675 Regency Place. My backyard is adjacent to the south part of this property, and I agree with the rest of my neighbors on this. We do not want it to be rezoned into anything that would be multiple families or apartments or anything like that. I don't know exactly what the south cul-de-sac is. I don't see it up there. You know, it just says R3. So if that's what you're approving is R3, then I assume that's open to anything, apartments or anything. So I am definitely against this zoning or rezoning to an R3.
No, just for clarification, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the piece of property to the south, which is the cul-de-sac with the existing townhomes in it, is an R3 with conditions, which
So
which is exactly what has been put on this request.
I don't see conditions up there.
Yep, it's in the planning commission, in the parentheses, it says planning commission recommends approval with conditions that only townhomes, duplexes, or single-family residences be allowed.
Okay. I saw the planning commission, but I didn't know that that was your,
That's what they're
what you
acting on.
go with.
Which is why I just wanted to make that's what I wanted to make
Right.
clear in the beginning, was that if this would go through, it would be consistent with what is exactly to the south.
Right. And like I said, I didn't know what was exactly to the south, but if that, the planning commission threw me off, I guess. I didn't know that that was your recommendation as well, so.
Right
And
now,
also I'm-
now, we're looking to vote on the recommendation that's come to us from the planning commission, so that's why that's the wording that's in there. That is their wish to us is, here you go.
Okay. And the other thing that I'm against is anyone putting up lights for security reasons, so they can put up cameras, things like that. No lights other than what we normally see right now on our street lights.
I don't think you would be able to put up extensive lighting on a resident that.
Well,
again,
it was.
am I missing something here, or?
It was mentioned that the owner may want to use camera systems to monitor what's going on.
Well, and I don't know that, but I tell you what, I think what would be useful is if we would let that side come up and maybe address some of the things that have been brought up.
Okay.
Obviously, they did miss the last meeting, so there's some questions I think that everybody might have, and try to address some of these thoughts and concerns, whether that be the attorney representing them or the property owner, whoever would like to come forth. I won't shut this discussion down. I think it will just help further the discussion.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Tom Farringer, 3919 25th Street, Columbus. Our office represents the applicant, and we assisted the applicant in filing the rezoning request and the special use permit request. I think it's probably a good time. I've talked to a lot of folks today here and in the crowd to let the council know that, I'm not Einstein, right? But I think Einstein said something about if you can't explain it simply enough, then you don't understand it. And I think I understand it. And I think Mr. Roth said it the right way, which is that everybody fears change, especially when the change is in your backyard. So I hear fear, number one, I hear change, and I hear devaluing property. I think to address a couple of those issues simply is that when most of the folks that are behind me that are in opposition, quote unquote, of this rezoning request bought their properties, Regency Place was already zoned R3C, which is exactly what the zoning and planning recommended this property be zoned to. And the applicant has agreed to that. She has no intent on putting up hotels, motels, or apartment complexes. So as far as the issues of owning a property where we feared the change that there was R3C in our neighborhood, that existed at the time most of these property owners bought their property. The second issue is the next item that's going to be taken up is the special use permit application. And I'm here now, and I think it'll probably help the discussion to simplify things. The applicant will withdraw that application. So as far as getting a special use permit for lodging, consider it withdrawn. So all we can talk about and focus on is the rezoning itself. And the rezoning itself is from R1 to R3C, which is exactly a conforming use to the neighborhood. Devaluing the property, I guess my family moved up to Indian Hills when I was in 6th or 7th grade, and I rode my bike on 18th Avenue up and down and past that property for a long time. I don't really know that one could argue straight-faced that rezoning this property with with no apartments, hotels, and motels with the R3C is going to devalue their property. The applicant has already infused a significant monetary commitment. And since I have known that property up and down, albeit a church, it's been a bit of an eyesore. So I suppose that, the issue could be made that it's going to devalue their property, but I guess I don't see that. The next issue I think that adds some confusion is the fact that we're all fearing that this property is going to be rented to individuals that are going to be of, ill repute. And obviously, after the applicant sticks a significant amount of money in this building, just like Mr. Jablonski, it's not in her best interest to be renting this property to anyone other than Class A renters who are going to respect it. I mean, it doesn't do her any good to rent this to 30, 40, and 50 folks that are going to trash the property and then devalue the neighbors. And the other fact of the matter is that all of us, I think we're tending to point the finger behind and adjacent to our properties when in reality, our neighbors to the left and the right and across the street can short-term rental their houses right now for just as many people as could go into this property. I mean, some of these houses are of significant square footage. So we're talking about worst case scenario, we're going to rent it to a biker gang of 40 people and then they're going to pillage the neighborhood. When the reality is that your neighbor could do that to you right now. So, I mean, I see some of the fear and some of the change being a bit probably misguided. I'm happy to answer any other question. There's been a lot brought up. I think that that's as simply as this Einstein can make it. Fear of change, it's always scary, and then fear of devalue. But the reality is, whether or not it's a legitimate LLC and all these other kind of red herrings that have been thrown out there, they don't exist. And I'm happy to go down those roads if you guys want me to, but at the same time, brevity's the soul of wit. So if you have any questions or if you want to hear from other people who oppose, Mr. Barr?
No questions, but the C on the townhouse lot, R3 lodging, it's R3C.
Correct.
The C was to make sure that the developer made those into townhomes. If he was going to sell one of those lots to you or I to build on, it reverted to R1. So that was the condition that's on there. There's no condition on there on this ordinance like that.
I think you might be right, but I think that, I don't want to get into all the legalities, and the city attorney can, I don't know that that's actually a lawful condition either. That every time
like 96, and that's what the council and Mr. Wirtz, the mayor, signed.
That's true. I'm not saying it doesn't say that, but what I am saying is that I don't know that that's a legally sufficient restriction on a property today. And if that is the issue, then I think we have to think through all of that as well. There's already a duplex on the property. So if the existing duplexes or townhomes that own that property now sell it to somebody else, it reverts back to R1, then it would automatically be in non-compliance because there's already a townhome on the lot. So, that's one of the reasons I would believe that particular condition, it isn't legally enforceable. You can't have something go back to R1 when the prior owner put a townhome on it and people own the townhome.
Oh, well, understood for that piece of property, yes, but there's conditions that we can put on there that are different than what, there are basically no conditions now, other than the fact that it's got to be a single home, a duplex or townhome. Those are the only conditions that are on there.
Those are pretty big conditions. If I own a piece of property with the conditions that I can only build one of those three things, and that's going to encumber me and all future owners, I don't know that we want any additional conditions to that. Now, all of a sudden, we have a lot that can never be built on in the city of Columbus, and we don't want that.
No.
The progress is tough.
I am doing a lot of listening here, but one of the points that was made earlier by Mrs. Hanson was that they have no plan. And I think it's a whole lot easier to change zoning or look at alternatives if you have a plan in front of you. Okay, we're gonna put in 2 duplexes over here and 3 single families over here and yada, 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 and here's the streets and curb and gutter and everything else. And the neighbors can look at that and say, that's not so bad. But they have nothing to look at this point in time. There's a lot of things being thrown out, to use your term, the red herrings. And some of them may be true, some of them may never come to fruition. You don't know. It's all speculation at this point. But personally, I think that unless there's a plan for the neighbors to look at and say, okay, this is okay, I can live with that, I think you got problems.
Yeah, I think the difficulty there, if I may, Mr. Lohr, is the plan is to rehab the existing building and turn it into a duplex. That is the plan. I think that this other grandiose plan of creating 10 buildings on this property that get rented out again to the biker gang, it doesn't exist. There is no other plans at this point on this property to put additional townhomes, duplexes. It's to rehab the existing facility, turn it into a duplex, and have the ability to do a long-term or short-term rental. That's it. There's no additional plans. There's been no platting. There's nothing else to do at this point.
Let me ask legal if could we make an amendment to the wording of this? Maybe not, because it's in its 3rd reading, but I'm stupid, so bear with me, okay? Can we make an amendment to this that specifies only a duplex? If they want to do more on that lot in the future, they start through the process again.
Yeah, they can't.
Well, Mr. Farringer's talking, they don't even have a plat. They don't even have a plan for the existing. My bigger question is, the special use permit, that church never was a residence. So I believe by our own code, that has to have a special use permit for lodging like you would downtown on any downtown building that never had residential. So by pulling the residential, you're gonna have to take down the church.
We're not pulling the residential.
You just said the special
we're
lodging.
withdrawing the application for the special use permit of lodging.
Well, that would have to go towards the church because the church was never a residence. And by our I believe our statute, because I know it's downtown, anybody that wanted to build an apartment above those buildings had to have a special use permit.
I don't believe so, Mr. Jablonski. I think it's
you
zoned
better refer to Neil.
Mr. Curtis could answer
Yeah, I think
that.
it's zoned R1. And as an R1 zoning, a church is allowed in R1, but it's R1.
It's a church, but not a residence.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dan.
Correct. It's zoned R1. Church is a permitted use. In order to convert the church to a single-family dwelling, if they did that, matter of fact, they've talked about doing some remodel now. All they would have to do is bring it up to code for a residence. It's different where you are at because you're in the downtown.
It's a different zone.
Different zoning district. You were in the B1 district. Now we do a permit on the 2nd floor though, without a special use permit, even in the B1. But the single family dwelling zone, as long as they meet the code for a dwelling.
Thank you.
Could I just say, I don't know who all I speak for in this room, but I speak for myself. I do not live in fear. I do not want it. There's a difference. I am not fearful of it. It's not what I want. And if this is not going to devalue our property, and it's not going to increase our property, why can our 4th Ward representative not vote on our behalf? He is our 4th Ward.
He's welcome to vote on your behalf.
I
He
thought you
chose.
just-
He chose not to. He asked to be excused. He was granted the permission to be excused.
Does he have to be excused?
That's up to you. Can ask him.
He had him.
He made the
That's
choice.
He made the choice. We didn't.
So it's not a requirement.
No, ma'am.
No.
Thank you.
One of the things that I can say that I was in question, and that is, you take a look at the church, and I've driven by it many times, and I couldn't visualize what I was seeing, and that is making this into a resident. So I called, and I said, all right, I'm a visual, and you need to give me some prints, give me an idea of what, what this is gonna look like. I got one. And I called Tom, or actually I called, and Tom got back to me, and I explained to him, and we had about an hour conversation, and the only question I have now is, this is a fairly large lot, and it's one lot for one building. Who's gonna maintain it? That's the question I have. Now, if you're gonna use it as rental, okay, now, are you gonna stipulate somewhere in the rental procedure that the renter needs to take care of the lot, or are you gonna have someone, or are you going to take care of it on your own? Or is that part of the rental fee that you're gonna have? But I did see the print, and I say, I was surprised. And last time there was some comments saying about, they have beer parties and that sort of thing, throwing cans over. And one of the things I looked at is where the bedrooms were. Because, usually, parties and stuff like that don't, bedrooms are pretty much a solemn area. So, but they're all on the back side. That's where the bedrooms are. Everything else is on the front facing the east. I thought that was a very good program. The only thing that I didn't see is, and they don't have it drawn up as yet, and that is what the outside will look like after they do the refurbishing, I'm sure that there's gonna, they're gonna have to make it can't look like a church, So they're gonna put in, some soffits or whatever it is that it takes to make it look more like a duplex, shall we say. So that, but I was pleased with what I saw. The only thing that I was concerned about, and I brought it up, and that is the area of that lot. Somebody's gonna have to maintain it. And that would be the thing that I would be concerned about, because right now, you people are looking at a piece of trash, and you got it in your backyard. What's it gonna look like 2 years from now? What's it gonna look like 3 years from now, 5 years from now? Pretty soon you're gonna have, people that don't have a home be breaking in and living in that place. So, as Tom said, we're dealing with a little bit of fear and the unknown. And I understand that. But maybe we ought to just take a look and visualize a little bit of maybe what this thing could look like. What if it's a big asset for your property? What if it helps your property? You don't know that. You don't know whether it's going to take it down either. So, I have to say that up until Friday of last week, I was a no. And after I looked at it, drove by it several times, I parked in the drive, and I sat back and I looked at it and I visualized. And this is what I saw, and that is, I think this is something that could be pretty good.
Yeah.
That's.
I think if I can chime in now. I think your first question is, who's gonna maintain it? The owner's gonna maintain it. Her husband's here, and I'm gonna throw him under the bus and say I think he's probably gonna maintain it. But it's gonna be maintained because you're not gonna have the tenants, whether they're short-term or long-term, mowing that entire lot. And to that point, I can't see the maintenance of it being any worse than it's been since 1985 when I was riding my bicycle past it. As far as what it's gonna look like on the outside, that's still a work in progress, because I think they're working with the building department. She's hired as a general contractor, Foreman Lumber. So I don't think she would be working with the Foreman boys to try to rehab that building and do it half-assed and not have it look nicer than it's looked since the 80s.
That is what I sat there and visualized, maybe where the doors should be, and maybe the windows, and I could see, maybe with some different siding, and it's gonna need a roof anyway. I mean, that could be,
She already
Tin on the
went
roof.
forward,
There's some
yeah.
pretty good
and she-
tin on the roof.
She tinned the roof, and the plan is new siding, new windows, and then keep the patio and all the entrances to the east, away from the neighbors in the back.
That's part of the drawing.
That's part of the plan. Again, is that unfortunately, part of that fear of the unknown and the change is that we're all neighbors to some degree, and we're all relying on each other to be good neighbors and then rent it out to good people, because it doesn't do anybody any good not to.
Tom, a question?
sir.
Well, I just have a, primarily for the neighbors, what do you, and in your neighborhood, what do you want? What would you like to see on that lot? I mean, I'm presuming you don't want to see this big empty lot with this church that's continuing to deteriorate. I'm presuming that's not what you want on that property. I'm right? And so when I drive around town and I look at the new duplexes that are being built and put up all over town, and the new buildings that are going up, to me, anything that's new going up looks a lot better than the church that is sitting on there now. And so I guess I'm just assuming that anything new that's going to go on there, it's in an area where duplexes are already zoned. You've already got duplexes and townhomes in your backyards or beside you. So we'll have that on that property, what you've already got in your neighborhood already. And they're not going to build something that's already rat infested or fallen apart, or, anyway, it's going to be brand new when it's built. So I guess I'm just having a hard time of what you don't want to see on that property, because I'm having a hard time envisioning that that's what it's going to be myself. I mean, I'm just having a hard time envisioning that it's going to be worse than what it already is.
Yeah, I don't argue that it's a eyesore, and to answer your question, I don't think we want to assume anything, and I think Rich Jablonski said it best. There is no comprehensive plan that we've had an opportunity to look at to see what you're going to do with the property. If we had that in front of us and you had a good plan, then I think it was a whole different situation. But you've come to us with no plan, and you're assuming things, and we don't want to assume. We want a plan in front of us that you guys have looked at that makes sense for our community, and it's not benefiting one individual to the detriment of a whole community.
Okay, thank you.
Carla Porter, 3666 18th Avenue. I do live in the townhomes to the south of this property, and I really have more of a clarifying question, maybe for Mr. Farringer. If anything else were to be done on this property, like add any additional buildings, anything of that sort, entrances, exits, lighting, is that required to come through in another, like a plat of the area, or is that only done if new lots are created?
A plat is only if new lots are created.
Can there be multiple family buildings on that lot without having them be on a separate lot?
If all of them are maintained by the same ownership, yes.
Then they can be. Okay, thank you.
Limited to a duplex, correct?
Limited to the townhomes and duplexes and single-family residents, and the intensity requirements of our zoning law.
Shay Spitz, 31303 231st Avenue. I just want to kind of address a few of the issues, I guess, that have come up. Colette had brought up the fact that the LLC was just created maybe last week, she said, but it was actually created in January of 2020. You guys, I sent it to Tara anyway, all the paperwork and the documentation and who has the actual ownership. Now, that's not something that I feel the community necessarily needs to need, but you guys obviously know who actually truly owns, or who the trustee is of that trust. So I just want to state that. And then as far as like a plat or a draw out, sorry, I'm a little nervous, but As far as a drawing, I was going to have a rendering created of it because I'm a visionary. I can see something before anything gets done. So to me, it's easy for me to walk into someplace and put it all together. We did have a sketch drawn up, but as far as like the outside, so what the outside is going to look like, just in case anybody wanted to know, is it's going to be white on the front outlet of it. It's going to be black around there, and then we're going to have a pitch with cedar. And it's going to have all new windows. We're going to have a 3 patio door for an exit for the patio just down the steps, and then we're going to fence that area in. I understand their concern, not knowing kind of what the plan is. Obviously, there's no plan to build anything in that extra area. Now, I do believe that if we ever wanted to do anything with that, we would obviously have to come up with building permits and all of that stuff anyway. It's not like we can just throw up 3 different townhomes without your guys' consent, of course. So there's no plan there. So we haven't drawn anything up. Scott Royal has nothing to do with this LLC. He obviously has no interest in it if you check the documentation. So I am the one who has the interest in it. And I truly did buy this property to better the community. I get very frustrated when I have people who judge my character and say that I don't have an interest in this community without knowing me. Because the last thing I want to do is harm anybody's neighborhood whatsoever. I saw a building that sat vacant for 2 years. And there was a lot of issues. The neighbors even stated there was people drinking in the backyard. I don't want that. And the last thing I want to do is depreciate anybody's building. And I'm really trying to take into consideration everybody's comments here because I understand. Like, I wouldn't want somebody trashing a neighboring adjacent property to mine at all. And I'm putting more money into this place than I even have in my own residence. So, like Mr. Behringer said, I mean, it's going to have quartz countertops. It's having high-end finishes. We are adding so much to this property, and the only reason we're asking for that R3 conditional use is to have that duplex, is to be able to utilize the space in the basement. Now, if that's something that I can't do at this time, that's totally fine. I guess it is what it is, but I just want everybody to know that I'm not here to sabotage anybody. And I'm sorry I'm an emotional wreck, but...
Relax.
It's okay.
It's an emotional issue on both sides, so I think everybody understands. So just take a deep breath. I think, any comment, any questions for Shay?
Well, Mayor.
Yes.
And it's probably more for the attorney than you. Is there, we're the third reading, is there any way that we can postpone this until we can get some plans so that the neighbors can look at the plans, the council can look at the plans, and we can either come together or not?
Well, this is what, our 4th meeting on this topic?
This is the third reading.
The third reading here, but it went to the planning commission.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've been to 4 meetings.
Well, I
and
understand
now all
that.
of a sudden, we're talking about plans?
If that's what it takes to satisfy
I
the
understand,
community.
but where were they? If they were the concerned citizens to have plans? That's what I said.
We didn't know that we were supposed to have plans. None of that was ever
Not required.
requested.
I think your neighbors would have really liked to see plans.
They could have asked. It was never requested. It was never required. Nothing, ever.
Well, we're trying to find some resolution here if we can. There's no need to point fingers or give innuendos at this point in time. If there's a way to do something to try to move forward, if it would satisfy, and that's an if, but if it would satisfy the neighbors, what is a little more time? What is a little more time?
I think you're looking at more cost for the owner. Now they have to go out, solicit for plans. Those aren't free. And it's not required by the city. I mean, we wouldn't require one of the residents that are currently there if they wanted to do something on a vacant lot to show plans to every neighbor.
Understand.
Can I offer these up? This
research. I did not make this information up. This came from state of Nebraska, state of Texas. I have not been fictitious about this. It's all dated. It's all right here. It's a paper trail. I'm happy to give it to the council.
I don't want it.
We have verification from the owner of the legality of her LLC.
It's not just about that, though. It's kind of been smokescreen. It hasn't been transparent.
Yeah.
Counsel.
The question is do you have to vote on this tonight? I think a council member can make a motion to table it till next week, or continue it till the next meeting if they so chose to, and was seconded and voted on.
The difficulty, I think, is that those that are asking for a plan, the plan is to rehabilitate the existing church. That's the plan, Mr. Jablonski.
Yeah,
There
but the
is
neighbors
no-
were asking, they were asking to see what.
Because I think everybody assumes that there's some other grandiose plan here to put townhomes and duplexes in all these specific areas. By the time
When we
the
want to put
rehab,
that to rest, when we want to address that question.
I am right now. There are no other plans. There are no other plans other than
Not
rehabilitating.
even seeing the plan on the church, let alone no other plans.
The plans of the church are to turn, to put new siding, new window. I guess I'm a little confused as to what do you mean by show the plans?
If they had a plan, if they could see that they're gonna do all of the stuff that they're saying they're gonna do, I guess.
I don't know that
if
that's
they would
gonna
be-
change I don't know that that's gonna change the underlying, again, brevity of the underlying issue, again, is the objection or the opposition to a short-term or long-term rental in your backyard. Whether the place looks like the Taj Mahal,
Well, leave it R1 then, and you can do whatever you want.
you can't do whatever you want because you can't turn the existing building into a duplex on R1. That is the entire issue here. To maximize the existing use of the building, it has to be a duplex. And the only way to make it a duplex is to go to R2 or R3. The reason the applicant went to R3 is because that's what the property to the south of this property is. And it's a conforming use in the same area. So certainly we can table this, which is going to do, in my mind, nothing, because there are no plans other than to rehabilitate the current structure.
Let's call the question then.
Well, I think part of.
Vote on it, let's go.
I think.
Move this thing on.
Well,
I'm Deb Anderson. My husband and I live at 3683 Regency Place, and we also own the lot to the north of us. And I just want to say I echo what a lot of our neighbors are concerned about. And even though we could make it Airbnb, we could not really put 30 people in our house. And I'm pretty sure most of our neighbors could not do an Airbnb for 30 people in our house. That being said, we are very excited about what she has done. I mean, it looks way, way better than it did. It really, really does. But we're just concerned about the number of people that could be there. And I do have a list of people who had, in the neighborhood, who had voiced their objection, but it also included the special use permit for lodging, so I'm not going to read their names because it included that. But just want to say my husband and I are both against the rezoning.
Thank you. We had a councilman ask for the question. Do we have a second? All right. Any other discussion on this matter? We had a councilman that asked council if we wanted to table this to another meeting. Is there a second in that discussion, or?
I don't think that was a motion, that was just a general question.
Or a suggestion? We had a suggestion. Does anybody want to make that a motion?
But don't we have an issue on the floor right now with a first and a second?
There is a motion, yeah, so that would have to be.
That's what I'm asking, to vote on it, up or down.
So that would have to be withdrawn if.
Well, you call for the question. Okay, I mean, if.
Yeah, we've had a first and a motion and a second. I'm just saying, we're either gonna vote it up or down or go away.
Right, for clarification, prior to discussion, there was a motion by Creashaw and a second to adopt this ordinance. So if the person who seconded that wants to remove their second, they can.
They would both have to, yeah.
Right. So if,
Who was the person who seconded?
Well,
who did second, I think?
Hemer.
Hemer did. So if you don't want to vote on it tonight, if you want to, your second to stand, then we vote on it as is.
We need to vote. I mean, we don't need
I just wanted to
delay.
make sure everybody understands.
Get up and say something.
Sure.
My name is Jim Slade. My wife and I live in a duplex to the south. And there's just a few things I'd like to say. I agree with Mr. Roth, Mr. Hanson, Mrs. Hanson, and Mr. Bennett with what they said. I do want to say a couple things. The uncertainty, if you look at that, where the building's located, it's pretty close to the lot line of those neighbors directly to the west. I just sit there and wonder, it goes back to the uncertainty people were talking about. What can you, okay, you can put enough money in that building to make it look presentable. The gentleman was up here a little while ago on the plus side of things. He called it an eyesore. Well, I don't know why you'd put that expensive roof on an eyesore, a building you just called an eyesore. You can do plenty of work to that building to make it feasible to work. But if you look right to the south of that building, that's the old Lost Creek area. The water level is very close to the top. And if you look at the difference in height from my neighbors to the north, like Rex Porter and everybody on that side, that is what I worry about. Okay, you can redo the house and make it presentable for rental or for living. With enough construction guys, you can do anything. Because I've got relatives that are construction guys, and they can do wonders. But without, I don't hear anything about what's going to be done with that south part, that huge part of that lot. Can that be subdivided? Can that be sold off? If I was a person that hypothetically purchased that building and I had 25 classic cars, I love classic cars, but I can't afford them. Okay, could I go ahead and build a 25 storage shed for all of my cars? And that's my concern. If a person loses money down the road when my daughter takes my house, if my daughter loses money on it, houses go up and down all the time. I mean, I've lost money on lots of things, and it's just part of life. But you have to, I think you have to consider all the other people in that neighborhood. I can look at my taxes, and I have looked at some of the people. It's accessible on assessors. I see what some of these people pay in taxes. $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 a year. That's a lot of money. So they should have some say. And that's about all I have to say. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, please.
Taylor Anderson, 3653 36th Avenue. I don't live in Regency or right there, but I live several blocks down the road, so I think I have a little bit of an interest in this. So 2 quick questions. So apparently there is a set of plans that we've seen that's been looked at. There's some bedrooms in the back, I think someone said. So how many people is this duplex designed to hold? I mean, I own a 3-bedroom home, so there's a limit there. I mean, how many bedrooms, how many people in theory could we pack in here if some of these rumors are true? If, I said. Does anyone have an answer for me there, or do we know? Or?
It'd be about 20 if there was a duplex.
20 in each so 10 in each side, 20.
It would be 12 and 8, if that.
Sorry, well,
It would be 12 on the top and 8 in the bottom.
thanks. And then I had another quick question. I heard a question earlier that I don't think I ever heard an answer to of could the ordinance be amended to state that only a building, meaning the existing church, can go there and we can't put up this theoretical army of townhouses if such was ever to be the property owner's desire. Is that something that could be done? Because I think for myself and for others that might bring a little more comfort, though that might not be the resolution that some in the room are looking for.
Well, we again have a motion and a second on the floor for the motion for the ordinance that's been approved. I think if you're gonna get into amending the motion at this, or the ordinance at this point, it, you know, it's a multiple page document to go in and find where exactly you're gonna change, and also there'll be a little bit of work to do that. And again, you know, if they have plans on building in the future, they're gonna have to go through the regular building process for the city, so building permits, all that type of stuff.
To answer your question, Taylor, yes, it's possible, but that's only if the owner wants to request that as a condition.
Okay. I think personally from my side, that'd be a nice thing to see, but like has been stated, it's not, there's avenues to get around that if they ever wanted to do it in the future, so that's all I have.
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second on the floor. We've had plenty of conversation. We will look for a vote. All those in favor of this motion, which would be to grant a R3 with conditions. I'm sorry? Yes, sir.
Pete Bennett there at 3661 Regency Place. When the vote comes up, please let those that vote, when it comes up on the screen, leave it up there for a bit so we can see how people vote. Would that be okay? Because you take it down immediately.
That'd be fine. That'd be fine, sir.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
So we have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance that would take us from an R1 to an R3 with conditions. Any further?
You want me to abstain for you?
Any further discussion until Rich gets Brent to abstain?
You already got him?
Yeah, I got him down.
All right.
Trying to do my duty.
Go ahead and vote.
Seeing no other discussion, all those in favor signify by aye. Those opposed, nay.
That's how long it froze up.
1, 2, 3, 4,
Four.
5.
There's 4.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
So an ordinance that is tied like this.
No, there's 5.
Well, there's
5.
but there's
There's 2 names on there that shouldn't be on there.
oh, why?
It's,
So what is
Oh, why is Pillin on there?
I'm not sure what happened.
Who's Lang and Pillin?
Oh,
For those names, okay?
Let's do a roll call vote, please,
okay. So
because it's the wrong thing.
Well,
There's a pillin, there's a pillin, and
You just
it
take those
failed,
2.
and there's no way for it to be to pass. Based on
One, two,
Lang and Pillin that voted yay.
well, whatever.
2 votes for, so there's no way for it to pass, even if you did, even if the mayor.
Okay.
It failed.
Motion failed.
Motion failed. Moves on to, well, they have pulled 17B. Do we need to make a motion to
Well,
pull
you can't
that?
have a special use permit in
To
in a
remove.
rezoned area without it being rezoned, so
So do we need to remove
I
it?
would just, move to remove it from the agenda, because it's
We need a
impossible.
motion to remove from the agenda 17B, ordinance number 2123 for approving a special use permit.
Mr. Mayor, I would make the motion to remove ordinance number 21-23 from tonight's.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by aye. Those opposed, nay.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Lost our audience.
Yeah. Didn't take him long to bail on us, does it?
Motion passes.
Item 17C, ordinance number 21-24, approving the purchase agreement with Sampson Green Solutions LLC in the amount of $40,000 for purchase of city-owned property located at 1365 24th Avenue, the old Gene Steffi building and lot.
Mr. Mayor, I move for the adoption of ordinance number 21-24.
We have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance number 21-24. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by aye, those opposed nay.
Better get out there, Todd.
Portion of that land and build a big shop.
Motion passes.
Item 18, payroll and bills on file. 18A, ARL Credit Services.
Mr. Mayor, I asked to abstain from this agenda item because I am owner of ARL Credit Services and therefore have a conflict of interest.
Mr. Mayor, I move that Councilmember Jablonski be allowed to abstain from voting on this agenda item and to suspend the city council rules requiring him to leave the council chambers during the discussion and vote on this agenda item.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by aye, those opposed nay. Motion passes.
Pay the bill. Peeling and laying
the
about
bill.
it again.
Okay, well,
Good
I
God.
move that, we pay Rich.
Thanks. Thank you. That's a lot of confidence.
Sorry.
We got a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
We got a second. All those in favor signify by aye, those opposed nay. Motion passes, meeting adjourned.